Okay, the second part of our agenda is an expert panel discussion. And it's entitled Hiring Right, When and How to Hire Your Team and Advisors. And the first person that I'm going to introduce is Jen Laidlaw, and she's a perfect person for this. Personally, she's a wife, a mother, and an uncle, and an aunt. And the reason why I said aunt is she brought her nephew with her tonight because he's interested in the entrepreneurial world. And so we love, doing the next generation. She's also owner of TeamWerks, which is a talent development consultancy. She's an NEF board member. She's president of the Ann Arbor Association for Talent Development. She's on the board of a startup, so she has seen this from every perspective and every angle. So she's a perfect person to moderate that. And with that, I'm going to invite our three panelists to come up, and Jen will take it from here.
Oh, yes. Yes, okay, all right. Oh, thank you. All right, so I'm going to just let all of you introduce yourselves here in a minute, but I was really excited to do this panel. For what I do for work is I help usually pretty small teams just be more effective, and I do that through team communication training. I'm a Scrum Master, if anybody knows what that is, right? And with leadership training and things like that. And I work with really small teams it can be like 7 people up to like maybe, 50, 60, something like that. But if you hire the right people and you make good choices as you're building your team, you won't ever need me. You'll be able to do it just because you have all the right people, right? And so I invited some local entrepreneur experts to help give us some insights into their experience and what they've done right, and maybe what they've not done right. I don't know. To give us some ideas about, if you're thinking about building your company, how do you know when you need someone, who you should hire, and how to make that work out the best for yourself. So with that, I'll let you all introduce yourselves. And I have a little cheat sheet here in case you forget to say something nice about yourself. So David, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, my name is David Bean. I'm the co-founder and client success officer for startup Ann Arbor cybersecurity startup Sensei. Sensei stands for Sensible Cyber. Our focus is creating and implementing proactive cyber programs for small and medium-sized organizations. My background is I've been a CIO for almost like the last 20 years of large organizations. Was a CIO for the state of Michigan for almost 7 years, and also the director of the Department of Technology Management Budget for 4 of those 7 as well. I wore both hats. Then I went on to be the global CIO of Lazy Boy. Anyone hear of that? Anybody have Lazy Boy? All right, I still have stock. Can you buy some more, please? That'd be really helpful. And then I left that and started Sensei with 3 other co-founders, and I'm really excited. Thank you for having me tonight, and I look forward to the discussion tonight.
I'm Michael Klock. I've been a C-suite executive, made a pivot to do financial and operations consulting to tech startups. I've worked with companies through Spark, through Spartan Innovations. I've also done a class on startups for the Michigan Association of CPAs. So try to be a good contributor to the ecosystem, and very excited about this discussion because it is one that both startups and companies well on their way spend a lot of time on, and that is having the right people in the company.
So Michael's also been a mentor at Ross and was host of the Bell Insight series on financing tech-focused ventures. Aha, I got one.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kurt Baumgarten. I am a partner at GM Ventures, which is the venture capital arm of General Motors. I'm an attorney, but I've spent almost my entire career as a venture investor. Prior to joining GM Ventures, I was running my own early stage investment firm that I founded here in Michigan, investing in pre-seed and seed stage founders, so very early, and helping them with their intellectual property development. I co-founded and ran the Point Angels for a number of years, one of the largest angel investment clubs in the state. currently serve on the board of directors for the Michigan Venture Capital Association, and proudly served as on the board of directors for the NEF, and have served on multiple coaching teams as well. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
And Kurt made an extra effort because he just had a second kid, like how many weeks ago? 4 weeks ago. So you're doing great. All right, so let's just dive in. First question. What do you think entrepreneurs should be looking for when they want to bring on someone new? Like either to the team, advisor, investor. So Michael, you have the microphone. You get to start.
All right, sounds good. I think that if you're talking about someone to bring on as part of the team, really looking for someone who's a problem solver. An individual has to be skilled enough. They've got to be willing to learn the business. But I think the critical element is they have to be willing to solve problems. And the corollary to that is to make decisions, to do the proper job of evaluation. I think it's also really helpful if you're bringing somebody on board to your company that if ideally you would love to bring somebody on board that fills a gap that you currently don't, that you have. So someone that brings a skill set that you currently don't possess. But if you do bring somebody on board who has kind of a duplicate skill, that can work too if it frees up one of the original founders to then be able to focus on other areas of the business that require attention.
The great thing about being on panels is everyone takes your answer, right? You got to go first. But no, I would say two things. One is complementary skills. So what you were saying, Mike, you want to bring on somebody, whether it's your board, your advisory board, your board of directors, or your team, that has skills that are going to complement the rest. Or they're going to be skills that they're bringing in that we don't have, like you were saying, right? And then the other thing I think is equally important is cultural fit. And when you're talking about early stage startups too, the cultural fit's really important. You want to make sure they have the grit and the desire to do a startup. I mean, this stuff isn't easy. And, an old mentor of mine told me one time, he said, always have beer in your refrigerator at the office. And I said, well, I always have beer, no matter where I'm at. But I said, why is that? And he said, because when you have that bad day and you're walking out at 7:30 at night and you're thinking to yourself, why am I doing this to my family and loved ones? Why, right? I can go get another job somewhere else. Go back and have a beer. And then he said, but when you sign that big deal, celebrate with that beer. So it's all about finding those complementary skills, how you fill out your team, and then it's also about that culture fit. And I can't talk enough about how important the culture fit is.
Another element that gets overlooked often is really what is the team for an early stage company. And depending on the route you're trying to go down with your new venture, that team might actually include some of your first investors. And when you start your company, it's all you. You've got the vision, you've got the people around you bought in and helping. But when you make that decision to, as we saw tonight, put your idea out there and actually represent to people that you have a vision they can actually make a return on investment for, that changes the relationship and your control over your company and what the expectations are. There's a lot of different types of investors, and at the very early stage, you really, to the concept of complementary skills, you want someone that brings more than money to the table. You can find money in a lot of places, but you want someone with a great network, who's maybe got some subject matter expertise, maybe who's done this before, and someone who is a team player and is going to be there for the long haul as well, because it's a very difficult journey. So really put a lot of thought even on the investment side, because at those first stages, those early investors really are part of your team as well.
All right, so for better or for worse, who was your first hire as an entrepreneur, and how did that go? Who wants to start?
Hold in the microphone. I'll go first. First hire that I made was actually part of a larger established organization. Worked for a founder whose hobby was developing new products, finding problems and thinking about solutions for them. And he was spending more and more time with this hobby and less time with this great business that was very, had enormous potential. And so I said, look, let's if we really want to do this right, and you develop the product, let's bring somebody on board to run it. Allows you to continue to be focused on your core business. You can still participate as a key contributor, as an essential contributor. And so we brought in a president. And the biggest thing was being philosophically aligned. Where were they at in their life that they wanted to take this opportunity that, again, despite the fact that we were in an established organization, we treated it like a startup. Because it had a product, it had no employees. So was that person willing to put in the hard labor till 7:30, 8:30, to all times of the day? And so when we brought this person on board, it was the gang of us. It was the gang of three, and we, pursued this, and we kind of kept shooing the president or the founder away. So that was just the president and myself doing a lot of the work. I think the biggest thing we had to do along the way is we had focused on growth and business development, and so as we got a few years in, we really had to put a greater emphasis on profitability because it was going well, and we didn't want to miss any financial opportunities.
I'm not going to tell you who, right? But I'll tell you two stories,
leave the names
right?
out.
Yeah, I'll leave the names out. First one, anyone here know Bush and Kilcarney? Right, you probably all do,
You
right?
just said you weren't going to say that. No, I'm just kidding.
He wasn't my first hire. We did a company back in 2009 called InfoReady. Still going, and people probably know it, right? We together, and with the other, there's three co-founders, hired this young woman straight out of college. And I remember when we hired her, we kind of all looked around and said, well, we just made our first hire, and she's straight out of college. How's this going to work? But the things I said earlier about that cultural fit and the tenacity and the fire in the belly really worked really well. She stayed with InfoReady for several years before she went on and did some really, really wonderful things. Second story is with Sensei, we hired, we looking for the same kind of skill set. We had a person on our team who 10 years into her career already as a laboratory scientist at a major health organization and decided, I don't want to do that anymore. And so she went back to school and got her degree in cybersecurity. And I remember when I was interviewing her, I was thinking, man, this person has the grit, this person has the vision, this person wants to change her life. I think I can add her to my team. And she's been wonderful, and as we've moved her into different roles, it's been really wonderful. It's that grit, that fire in your belly, that passion, that desire to do something hard is what really attracted us to her. Because she left her job, went and got a degree, went and got a certificate in cybersecurity, and we were taking a big chance on her. But we looked at her as a full person, and that's why we brought her on. She's been very successful so far.
In my investment portfolio, I've got some examples of really impactful investors that came in early on and saw the raw material, they saw the promise of the team, they saw the promise of the market and the vision, but they were true believers, and that's really critical in the first kind of wave of people you bring in around you. They have to be bought into the vision, and they have to be there along for the ups and the downs. And so in this particular case, this investor put in her own capital from her own fund, and then took the role of mentor, and really, as you see with NEF and others, provided that coaching to the founders who had great potential, but they hadn't done this before. She was a seasoned business person and investor, and was able to guide them through. They were highly receptive to it, and extend her credibility out to the investor network, and solicit some other people to come in alongside her. So when you can find that true believer, even as your investor, it really helps not only bring that perspective and experience, but it drives accountability, which, when you're going from that phase of this is my pet project, and yeah, I can maybe, if it doesn't work, it's on me and I'll do something else. If you really want to be successful, you have to drive accountability, either through yourself or through your team, and your first investors and first kind of arm's length folks can do that for you.
All right, what's the worst hiring story or experience? Someone joining a team, we bring on an advisor, like what's anybody have any what not to do advice for us?
Can't use names?
No.
Maybe you can.
Okay.
Pause the recording. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. I was involved in a team, and it was a technical founder, very brilliant, and they needed someone to come in and be the CEO. The founder wanted to stay with the product and the technology, and so they brought in somebody that was very like-minded, very skilled also in the technology that was being used within this company. But the problem is he did not possess any of the skills that a CEO. He had no experience having done it, and so he didn't bring anything complementary to the team, and so wasn't used to driving accountability, driving towards deadlines. Was just very focused on the product, and we had somebody that did that, and so this person as the CEO just wasn't able to make that transition for the company to the next stage and the stage after that.
How did you know that, I mean, you didn't hire the right CEO, but how did you know you were ready for a CEO?
Things weren't getting done. I mean, that's usually when you look to somebody is that you're not on the path that you want to be on, and there's usually a reason. If it's a technical reason you're having a problem with your product development, you have to kind of look internally. Am I trying to solve the problem correctly? Do I need somebody with some additional skill set? That's when your advisors can come in and really be helpful in kind of pointing you in the right direction. So that part is, but when you really need someone to help drive that evaluation of how is the business doing. And so that's usually a pivot point to say we got to bring somebody on board.
Awesome. All right, other examples of what not to do?
So I'll speak from the investor perspective again, even though it's not necessarily relevant to everyone's business and what they're seeking out to do. The concept is the same. You want to be on the lookout for kind of fundamental misalignments of expectations for really what the company is setting out to do. So in one example, a founder took some capital from some angel investors, represented by a kind of lead investor in the group. Things were going well, but the company needed to scale rapidly, and they had a great product, trying to take market share, highly competitive, and this was known. This was what they intended to do. The investor, however, was encouraging them to just bootstrap. Don't take on additional money. Don't dilute everyone down. Just bootstrap it and do what you can do and kind of chug along and get there. Now that was I don't know, but I would speculate maybe they didn't have additional capital to contribute to the company. And so they were kind of in their own self-interest saying, we don't want to get diluted. By extension, I'm telling my founders, just bootstrap it and keep going. And so there was a fundamental misalignment on what needed to be done to move forward and have success for the company. And that was something that, through some pretty pointed questions, could have been sorted out up front. And had they done that, it would have resolved a lot of issues they faced.
I've hired a lot of people in my career, right? Working for big organizations now, doing my own thing. I don't say there's ever been a hiring disaster, right? I would say that there's been times when we were misaligned with people, right? Because, when you hire somebody, you kind of go through, hiring is one of the most important things you do, and you go through a process to try to hire the right people. And so sometimes, right, there's a misalignment. Good people just misalign. I think there's probably a couple times where, I've brought on less experienced people who really had, and I misinterpret it as confidence, but really cockiness. And they just weren't that cultural fit. They interviewed incredibly well, right? I wasn't the only one interviewed, several of us interviewed them. But when they got there, you saw a different side of them. And it does make you sit back and say, man, what did I miss? But again, not bad people, right? Just not the right seat in the right organization.
Yeah, so interviewing, like hiring people is incredibly difficult. I myself run, training around that, like teaching managers and leaders how to interview and hire right. And it's like going on 2 dates and then we have to get married, right? And you have to decide, like I've met you twice, I don't know, let's get married. come on in to the business and whatever. And then you really find out, uh-oh, this was great, or uh-oh, this was not so good. So
Yeah.
it's a really difficult thing to hire the right person when you only, get a limited amount of time with them. You only go on 2 dates.
Yeah, and it's an expensive venture, and if you don't get it right, it can have some negative
slow the
impacts.
growth of your
Slow the growth of the
business.
company.
Right, you get stuck, stuff continues not to get done. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can impact your brand a little bit if they had done something that wasn't that wasn't great for the company.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, hiring people is the most important thing we do, in my opinion. You build a great product, you try to sell the great product, but hiring the people to help grow that company are really, really important.
So I heard a theme with a lot of the answers you all have talked about so far is just be really clear about expectations and what we expect of each other. Like what I expect from you, what you expect from me. Do we have the same vision? Are we heading in the same direction? What are you going to do? What am I going to do to help you decide, is this marriage going to work out? Okay, so what's the difference between a team of advisors and a board? And when are you ready for each one? And what's the...
I always view advisors as individuals that can help provide direction to where you're going. They're people like, hey, I'm having an issue with a personnel hire. I'm really not familiar with this market. Can you help connect me with someone who can help me understand it? Or I'm having a technical issue, and I really need to get in touch with someone who does software development. Where to me a board is, they're evaluating you. They're there to help, but they're holding you accountable to your plan. You present the plan to the board, and then the board is like, you come back in a month, and I want to know how you're doing. And if you're not doing what you said you're going to do, then we're going to either tweak that plan or find out what resource you don't have to execute that plan. I've been in a lot of organizations where I've not been on the board, but I get board members calling me and saying, hey, what's going on? That product should have gone out the door a month ago. What happened? And so you also have to realize that your board members and investors will sometimes go right around you to other people within the organization. So having that communication for that leadership team is essential to your success, because you will have people that go right around you to get information. And that's not a terrible thing. You just have to be prepared for it and just make sure you have that unified vision and commitment.
Yeah, the advisors, they play a critical role. They come in a lot of different ways at different stages and provide tremendous value, networks, technical expertise, business experience, those types of things. The board fundamentally is about governance for your company and accountability, and they're there to look out for the interests of the shareholders. And so when you as an entrepreneur make that decision, that you're at a point in your business venture where it's no longer just you as a sole proprietor or as a partnership. You actually have other voices around the table. You're bringing in perhaps some additional capital. Then it becomes the company, not my project, my thing. It's the company, and that's what that board really represents. That it's a business entity with governance and with people that, in that realm, they bring that same experience and that same expertise. And a well-constructed board, you'll have folks asking to get on the board. Say, yeah, I'll come in. Let me join your board. Well, they have a lot of power, and they can be really effective leaders for your company and helping hold the CEO accountable and solve problems and open doors. But they can also be obstacles and dead weight or worse sometimes. But it's really representative of this transition you go through as a founder and as an entrepreneur. It's no longer my project, it's the company. And it's this own thing that now I play a role in and I have responsibilities for.
He described the board perfectly, so I'm not even, that's spot on. I'll tell you about Sensei and our board of advisors, right? We have, I think, 7 either chief security officers or chief information security officers or marketing people who work in security companies who are our board of advisors, and we meet with them quarterly. And they bring guidance and advice on what they're seeing in the industry. Because as a co-founder and one of the team leaders, we're heads down a lot. And sometimes, like, I joke with one of our older co-founders. I say, I'm going to lose my skill set here, man. I'm working so hard. I'm not doing the things I used to be doing. These board of advisors actually come in and kind of ground us a little bit, and kind of tell us, hey, here's where we're seeing the industry going. Here's where we see your market going, and we're very grateful for them. Very grateful for them. And Kurt, what you said about the board, you were spot on. I mean, it is that transition of a founder. Oh boy, we brought in money. It's the company now. It's still inspiring and fun, but there's responsibility now.
Do you have any questions you want to ask? Yeah. Let me come out to you because I think I have the only microphone. Well, they need the microphone to answer, so I'll do this.
Okay, so yeah, that's good. So like I have an very early stage startup and just 2 co-founders. I'm sure I'll be needing more people on the team. How do I find people who are equally invested in the idea? And invested, I don't mean money-wise, but they are passionate about what I want to do. And this is one of the biggest reasons that I'm kind of cagey around getting any more person on the team yet at the level, because I don't know why they even want to be with me when they won't be getting anything, in return, substantially. So how do you solve that problem?
Yeah, different companies may be in different situations for their first hire. Some of them will have some capital. Others don't. As a founder, you don't have the capital to bring on some of that key talent. And what you really need is people that are buying into that vision. You are presenting them with an opportunity that's valuable to them because they have their own skills and abilities and experience that they can apply into what you've constructed and envisioned. And they see that that's stable and credible. They're going to invest their time and reputation in it because that's where they're going to get recognize their value. They're not doing it, your first hires might not be doing it for a paycheck. They're doing it for more of the upside, that in return, then you have to give them some of that upside to incentivize them. But that's what you have to help prepare, is something that you can attract that type of talent, that type of commitment to someone is aligned. And they say, yeah, I can bring some value. I'm willing to bet on myself, and I'm willing to bet on this opportunity.
Great question.
Who else has a question? Thank you.
Oh, I don't get to talk to Jen's hip. It's embarrassing. So, I'm curious, how do you start salary negotiations? You're looking to bring someone into your C-suite. You're bootstrapped. Every time you spend $1, it affects your runway. Of course, you bring equity into the equation. Any general guidelines?
See, at Spark, we have 3 of these.
When I've seen boards established on startups, one of the things, or investment, I'm going to rephrase it, when investment dollars come in and equity, now you're talking about shares, you're not talking about 2 co-founders 50-50 or one person 100%. What is normally I hear a lot is, hey, let's put aside X% for team members as they onboard. And so what that is, I think Kurt might have a better answer than me, but let's say it's anywhere between 5 and 15%. Is like that's for your team that is essential to build your organization, because you're not going to be able to pay them the money. So you have to commit in your mind, I'm going to have to give up something if I don't have the cash. You could get fortunate and have someone that's just really passionate about what you're doing, but most people are going to want to really, if you want them committed to your team, and I used the word gang earlier, if you're a gang and it's however many of you, and you are striving towards that one goal, you want them tied up in multiple ways, emotionally, financially, and so you can. But then there are some very standard ways in which you onboard. You don't just say, oh, here it all is all at once. I mean, there are ways to stage that so that as time goes on and their level of commitment and contribution is shown, the more they get.
I'd say my advice is really understand what the market is. What's a market salary for that person? What else would they be looking at? And how can you stack up to that? And if you're right in line with what you can offer them in terms of cash compensation, then that's a good kind of thing to keep in mind. But you don't go in blind. Understand what the market is by just asking around or seeing what's going on. And then on the equity piece, that's there to incentivize, just as Michael said. And you would really, now, I'm an attorney. This is not legal advice for you, so consult your own company counsel on this. But you want to set it up. It's an opportunity for you to set up a vesting schedule. So they get some up front, maybe after a year they get it. And then the rest of it comes in over time, and you use that to tie them to certain benchmarks and certain achievements and accomplishments that, again, right in those negotiations, you lay out for them so that they know what they're expected to achieve. But my kind of baseline advice would be to understand what's market, and then how you stack up to that, and adjust your negotiation strategy accordingly.
See, again, the panel, they said everything I was going to say, right? The only thing that I would add on to that is that cultural fit piece. And almost to touch on your question, too, the ability to inspire other people to want to be part of something bigger than themselves is really important when you're doing a startup. Because you're actually talking to people about something that, the odds aren't great, but you want to inspire them to do something that they really are excited about. And so if you have someone come to you and want to, it's really important that you talk to them about that. I always like to say, definitely look at the market. But even when I was at the state government or the county government, I always just tell people, I can just get you in the ballpark. I'm not going to bring you in the top. But I can inspire you to do great things. And we want you to join the team, and we give them all the reasons why. And if you have a great vision and something that's going to get them excited, and then you follow through on your commitments to them, then I think you can really get a great teammate early on. It's been successful in my public service. It's also been pretty successful in my entrepreneur career too.
I think finding out where people are in their lives. I mean, really understanding, the more you can talk on those 2 dates, the more you're going to benefit yourself. And, ask them questions about.
Did you just have a kid 4 weeks ago?
Find out, did you just have a child? Or, did you just have a successful exit from another company? Are you just tired of what you've been doing and you're really looking to be part of a team? That can be a really big motivator for people, but you need to understand, hey, this is just transitory for them. That's not going to help you move along.
I mean, think about, Mott, right? What inspires people to come work for you?
Our inspiration?
Yeah, what?
It's a crazy cool idea and concept that communities need, and it jives with the team.
That's the answer, right there.
And I love the adjectives he uses. I mean, it's not business speak, it's cool. We will go right here.
When you're at the very early stage of a startup, then you have always the problem that everyone has just around like 150 complex social connections. So how do you balance with the very first people that you work with, knowing them very well, and them having a very good fit in terms of skill and what the project needs? Thank you.
It's difficult. It's difficult, and there has to be some instinct up front on, hey, this is my buddy, but is this my business partner? And those are different things. And you also have to think several steps ahead of, okay, we're going to get up off the ground. I envision success. Everyone around the table envisioned success in the beginning. But then if we need to go outside of our core bubble here, people are going to be looking at this objectively. And the team is fundamentally the most important thing in any business venture. And it might be people might think it's a technology, huge market. No. It's the team. And that base level is what you're going to be judged by a lot of your first, again, those arm's length people that you don't have any personal credibility with. They're not in your network. But you have to convince them that they should put their time and attention and money into what you're trying to do to help see that vision. So when you think through that, you might have a small circle. Everyone's got their capabilities and their strengths and weaknesses. But craft that kind of story for why that's such a strong partnership and why other people are going to be able to see that yours is the team that has those complementary skill sets. And if not the raw experience, has the drive and the talent to be able to achieve with some guidance and go from there. But it's really, it's a gut feeling, kind of instinct, but also think a few steps ahead. That's my best advice.
Thinking like some of the training that I do for interviewing people and kind of narrowing down your options is really, you all said it before, but identifying like where our gaps and skills are right now and where we see them, and then making sure that you're really spending time talking about, like asking really good questions to potential partners, potential team members around those things. Really good, like, tell me about a time when you had to do this thing, or tell me about, just so that you can start narrowing your field a little bit.
Hi. I have two questions actually. From what I understood, the hiring process can take some time and it can also cost. So I mean, are there any ways that you can think of to make this process more cost and time effective? And the second question is, how do you incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion in those hiring decision-making processes too?
Cost-effective hiring process.
So cost effective, my advice would be kind of similar to any business challenge that you're going to be spending money on with outside resources. Do your best to have an idea of what you're looking for before you start. And do your best to understand kind of the vision for the puzzle pieces you need. But be open-minded, because when you start looking, you're going to say, wow, I didn't even realize that people had this type of experience, or we had this type of blind spot. But, know what your ask is of your attorneys and of your hiring professionals and people that you use, and really what is success going to look like for you? How do you know when you see it, so you don't have to burn a bunch of money? And then really get really directed stuff from your counsels and things like that. Now, literally in terms of cost effectiveness, there's several law firms here locally that they have a menu of set price stuff for startups and for founders, because they recognize that they don't have capital to spend on professional services. So if you can find maybe one of those local firms that can help with that process for like a package price, that goes a long way for you. In terms of DEI, I think there's tremendous value in diversity of experiences and perspectives. And so you can find that in all types of different ways. But be really open-minded to what someone's experience is, and try to understand. Don't just listen and hear when you're talking to people and evaluate them, but be a little curious and really try to understand, kind of what makes this person tick, what have they lived through, how do they see things, how do they see what I'm trying to do, and see if it's a good fit. And if you have that kind of diversity of opinion and perspective, it goes a long way to making your company and your business venture much more durable.
I think talking to other startup founders and what their experiences have been is very beneficial. When I go into companies and I'm talking to founders, and I'm usually coming in as a finance or operations person, I always try to drive that founder to be part of like-minded people of, hey, you're a founder, what has been your experience like this? Where did you go to try to hire people? What kind of process did you follow? And I think trying to kind of burrow into the ecosystem, if you will, is very helpful in your search for people.
Yeah, I got nothing to add. That was really good. Right, that was really, really good. The only thing I'd add on the diversity piece is you can recruit for that too. Be conscious of that when you're out recruiting, but the diversity of thought, diversity of experience, all those kind of things, it makes your company durable. And that's when you're, as a startup, you need to be durable. And so that was great advice. I learned. Thank you.
Okay, this is probably going to be the last question, and I'm going to go here. And just following up on Michael's point about working with other founders, Doug Song is funding an organization called Michigan Founders Fund, and that's a great place where it's peer-to-peer. You're meeting with other founders. You're not meeting with someone trying to sell you services or looking to invest. So if you're an entrepreneur, look into that.
So we've talked a lot about the process of selecting early hires, but I think there's a big decision to be made when you get to the point of making a decision on course correction versus exiting that person out of the organization. Do you have any tips on how someone could think about the investment of time and resources and course correction versus saying it's time to cut bait?
Well, I'd like to ask you more questions, kind of get more specific about it.
There's networking right after.
Oh, well, there you go. I think if there is a mismatch, what I've seen in more often than not in talking to people and in some of my experiences is the decision to separate from another person isn't done fast enough. If there is not a match, it's not a match. If that person is not making their deadlines, unless you really understand how an outside force contributed to it, if it's not working, just move on. You just, as a startup time, you have to take advantage of time. You have to move briskly, and that's a term I use a lot. Running, you might be a little reckless. You can't walk because you're going to get swamped by other people, but you got to move briskly. And if there is someone that is not keeping pace with what you're doing, my advice is you move on.
Or having a conversation and seeing if you can improve the situation.
Absolutely, but I would, again, if you're in this early stage and you may want to have that truncated, you would hope that you are dealing with this individually on, if not a daily basis, a weekly basis, that you are interacting with them all of the time. And so nothing you say should ever surprise someone. And I think that's when I've done reviews of individuals. When they walk in, I shouldn't say anything that they've not heard multiple times before.
You know, I think to Michael's point, you know, doing it quickly, but doing it, you know, humanely too, right? You know, when you bring somebody on, especially in an early startup, we talked a lot about cultural fit. We talked about complementary skills. That person joined your organization for a reason. So how do you do it in a way that is brisk, but is also respectful and, you know, allows for that person to exit with dignity and respect? Because that person's going out to get their next job. And so I think, you know, I've seen in some of my experience, I've seen when people don't do that. And I think that not only bad for that individual, but it's bad for your company. And so it's bad for your brand. And so I think that that piece of, again, we're in the, you know, the human business too, right? And so you got to make sure you keep that in the back of your mind as you do this. Because I think moving briskly, but moving with grace is really important.
Yeah, I do a lot of like leadership coaching, and in my experience, most people really don't want to have difficult conversations. But as a startup person, you really need to, really early. And in my experience too, we wait way too long to have the conversation.
Right. I think that's great advice. Spoken from experience, you know, of trying to go through these difficult situations. But when it comes to retasking or repurposing someone, my advice would be you have to be objective and you have to be realistic. Not just you, but everybody. Because I've seen situations that work out very well, where, for example, a CEO of a company or founder of a company, the company matures to a point where they need to bring on other talent. And that person can handle transitioning from maybe CEO to head of sales or something like that. And continuing to use that experience, to your point, that you've invested in, that they've built. I've seen other situations where that's been tried, and either that person who you've transitioned to a different role, it just doesn't work. But you also have to be aware that the new person you bring in to replace them may have their own expectations for how they want to run things and do things in that role. And if you have someone who's maybe hanging out with their own opinions on stuff, there's going to be some clashes there. So you have to take that holistic look. It can work, but you have to be objective and you have to be realistic. And if you can't come to terms on that stuff, then move as quickly as possible to resolve the situation.
And you all ask some amazing, amazing smart questions. And thank you guys so much for all the insights and all the sharing your experience with us, and even your what not to do stories. It's always a little humbling to share the things that have gone wrong. But really appreciate all of you being willing to come out here and meet with our NEF community and answer some questions. And if you see them around during networking, don't know, I'm just going to volunteer you that you're going to talk to other people, answer their questions. But no, thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for, like I said, asking such great questions. Thank you.